Good morning to everyone. Welcome to the house. I am your host, Dr. Dwight A. Moody, inviting you to stay tuned for a few minutes as we center our souls in the midst of all of the personal and public confusion in the world. And as we turn to our red letter lesson and find in the life and teaching of Jesus of Nazareth a way to discern the kind of reaction we need to have, the kind of action we need to take in the world today. Thank you. This is broadcast number 31. All of them are archived on my YouTube channel at Dwight A. Moody, and you can go back and watch any of them or all of them or parts of them at any time. Thank you very much for your interest. I want to begin today by telling you a story. About 10 days ago, I, with members of my family, we drove from South Carolina, where I am today, on an overcast, cool fall day. There's nobody in the swimming pool. We had a few people in the billiard room here a few minutes ago. But 10 days ago, we were riding across the mountains on Interstate 40 to our rendezvous, the great export of the state of Texas, Buc-ee's. How many of you have been to a Buc-ee's? These are the Walmart of gas stations. Huge operations, wonderful food, cleanest bathrooms in the country. I'll have to tell you, I love Buc-ee's. And while we were there, I bought a cinnamon roll. Now, you know, if you've been watching very long, that I like cinnamon rolls. I make them, I buy them, I eat them, I save them, I serve them when I'm the host of something. And I bought cinnamon rolls at Buc-ee's. And here's the great thing about them. They're some of the best I've ever had. I think they're done on a grill instead of in an oven. They're larger, flatter, a little crispy, not as much topping, but plenty of cinnamon. You might want to try it the next time you go to Buc-ee's. But on the way, just before we got there, I got behind a truck, and I took some pictures of that truck. Turned out it was a moving van, and there were two of them. On the side of the truck, it said a Better Way Moving Company. A Better Way Moving Company. And on the back, this message: you got problems? Give Jesus a try. Give Jesus a try. I liked that message. I liked it going up and down the highway. I don't know what they mean by that, but I do think that that sums up part of what we're trying to do here in the house. That is, give Jesus a try as an example of what it means to be a human, what it means to be a person, what it means to be alive, what it means to connect and engage with another person. Try Jesus as an avenue to God, to the mystery of the universe, to the spirit of things. That is, in learning from Jesus, in following Jesus, in reading the text that we're going to read in just a minute, Jesus opens up a way for us to connect with God, to worship God, to hear the voice of God, to follow in the ways that God describes, not only in the Bible, but many other religious documents in the world. Give Jesus a try in a way if you're trying to connect with God. And then give Jesus a try as an interpreter of what's going on around us. Not only in our immediate surroundings, in the social engagements we have, in the ebb and flow of our culture, our history, but also in the wider stretch of things, taking a longer view of history or a wider view of the world. What is going on in the world? This, of course, is what we try to do and what we're doing right now in this series of our red letter lessons. I'm going to get to it in just a minute. But the focus in these weeks on Jesus and the red letter lesson has been on Jesus and politics. Sometimes we think that Jesus was apolitical, that he did not engage in the political issues of his time. But in our rereading of the gospel accounts of Jesus, what I've tried to share with you is that, yes, Jesus was very much aware of the political dynamics. He lived and worked and died in a region of the world that was occupied by a foreign power. And there are many places in the world where this is true today. Sometimes those foreign powers are a government. Sometimes they are a gang. And sometimes they are a different law. Sometimes they are lawless. But part of what we're going to read today is Jesus giving his disciples in the first century, 2,000 years ago, guidance on how to navigate the political trauma of his day. He actually predicted the war, the outbreak of hostilities, the coming of the Roman armies, the destruction of Jerusalem, the fall of Jerusalem. And in this text, as we read it today, in just a few minutes, the question comes to us, can Jesus be a coach for us in the drama and trauma of our own lives, in the drama and trauma of what's going on in our country and the world? Can we look to Jesus, and this particular passage that we're going to look at, can Jesus be for us a coach in how to handle these things? Now, we live, of course, in very traumatic times. It's a time in our own country of great change, of things that used to be nailed down have come loose. Things that used to operate in familiar ways have been disrupted. People have new ideas about how we should do things, where we should go, how we should relate to one another. Some people love this. Some people think it's the coming of the greatest thing ever. As a matter of fact, I saw a video this week on Facebook posted by a cousin of mine. It was a video of a woman by the name of Elsa Kurt. Elsa Kurt. I'd never heard of this woman. I had to do some background checking of it. But I watched her short video several times. It was her testimony about how she both loves Trump and follows Jesus. How she loves Trump and follows Jesus. In this way, she speaks, I think, for a lot of people in the country. Certainly a lot of people voted for Mr. Trump, and a lot of people still support him. But I took this opportunity, first of all, to create a response to Elsa Kurt. She is a woman, I found out, who lives up in the Northeast. She is in communication. She does podcasts. She's an activist, all of it in defense of the new Make America Great movement. But I transcribed her testimony, and then I provided a running commentary of it. Now, I don't have time to go through all of that this morning, but you can go to my website at themeetinghouse.net, and right there on the home page is this article, her testimony, word for word, my commentary on it, my response to it, my explanation of what she is saying, why she is saying it, and how many of us respond to it. You might find it helpful and insightful. You might want to go there and take a look at it. But you know, she doesn't speak for everybody. There are many of us in the country that have a great deal of fear about what's happening, that our whole democratic system is under attack, and there are reasons to believe this. Three things came to my attention just this week, and I want to mention them briefly. to illustrate why many of us are concerned about the changes in our country and how, in this time of change and upheaval, we can turn to our red letter lesson and find some direction about how we are to respond. The first thing that happened was, again, the president announced that he was looking for ways to revoke people's citizenship. Now, I had a conversation just this week of a man whose parents came over from Nigeria and secured citizenship. And this man, who's a friend of mine, he's in the broadcast world. He was born in our country, so he has had from birth citizenship. But our president is now advocating reviewing everybody's citizenship, especially those who got it through a naturalization process or who were born citizens even though their parents may have not been citizens. This is a flipping of long-standing guidelines and securities and promises and rights in our country, but who knows where it will lead. The second thing is that I listened to a short speech this week. The man who runs the Federalist Society and was instrumental in writing this big book called Project 2025, has suggested that cities, conservative states that have in them blue or progressive cities, revoke the charters of these cities and take control of the governance of these cities. He's talking about cities like Atlanta in Georgia and Houston in Texas, Louisville in Kentucky, Raleigh perhaps in North Carolina, maybe even Columbia here in our own South Carolina, Miami, Tampa in Florida, to revoke the charters of these cities and the ability of the citizens in these large cities to control certain aspects of their common life, to revoke them and put their governance in the hands of red-dominated state legislatures. And then I want to bring up the issue of violence. We first began to encounter violence as we watched militias around the country grow, armed militias, people withdrawing from society, no confidence in the government, arming themselves, preparing for some kind of chaos in the future. And then, of course, January 6th a few years ago, when a mob, armed and violent mob, stormed our congressional building and did all kinds of damage, killed people, broke many, many laws. Many of these people were arrested, prosecuted, charged, and incarcerated. And then, of course, the president pardoned all of them as a way of saying this was not real violence, and if it was violence, it was done for a good cause and in defense of the country. This is dangerous talk. And now the president sent the National Guard into Los Angeles for no purpose whatsoever, just as a show of force that he could do it. And this week, he suggested that he needed to declare martial law and appoint military commanders for every state. Now, all of this type of thing alarms many people because given what's happened over the last 6 months, anything is possible. Things we never dreamed of have now become not only possible, but probable. So many of us are concerned about this social, political trauma in our country. We don't know where it's headed. But in the midst of this, I want to encourage you to take your Bible, open up to Mark chapter 13, and I'm going to read another segment of this chapter. as we have on this Sunday morning, we're going to have our red letter lesson about something Jesus said about a traumatic, dramatic, dangerous, and deadly time for his own people in his own time in his own city. I'll be back in just a minute.
And now this week's red letter lesson.
I've got my Bible, I have my glasses, and I'm going to give you a brief overlook of Mark chapter 13. This is what we call Jesus' prophetic sermon. It was about what he saw coming down the pike. And this collection in Mark 13 and also Matthew 24 is divided into 4 parts. I spoke several weeks ago about the questions, verses 1 to 4. I'm not going to go over that, but that's the first part of it. And then in response to the questions of his disciples about when the destruction of Jerusalem is going to happen, Jesus, in verses 5 to 13, and I read those last week, warned his people that not to be confused by every dramatic thing that happens in the world. He said there's going to be wars and rumors of wars, famines and earthquakes. But do not be deceived. This is not a sign of the end of the age or the destruction of Jerusalem. This is just the way life is around the world. Nation against nation, brother against brother, countries overthrown, fires, earthquakes. This is just the way life is. If not today, tomorrow. If not here, over there. And while we have to endure these things and find a way to be decent, strong, courageous, brave people in these kinds of dramatic and traumatic times, this was not the end of Jerusalem, let alone the end of the age. So then we come to his talking about that day. That day. Now this phrase evokes a long-standing prophetic word or tradition in the Hebrew prophets that is known by the day of the Lord. The prophets would talk about the day of the Lord, by which they meant a day when God was going to do something in the world. Now, they didn't necessarily mean the end of the age or blowing up the world or things coming to an end. No. The day of the Lord was a time when God was going to intervene either in judgment or in salvation, basically on his people or on the world. And that God was going to disrupt things, sometimes by natural causes, sometimes by a foreign army, sometimes by internal rebellion. That these episodes were going to be the occasion of God's bringing some kind of judgment or some kind of redemption into the world. And then this is what Jesus is referring to when he says this, beginning in verse 14. Let me read part of it to you. But when you see the abomination of desolations spoken of by the Daniel the prophet, you see this, he's harking back to the prophetic tradition. And Daniel was talking about one of these days of the Lord when God was going to do something dramatic and powerful. When you see the abomination of desolation, and then he says, the editor says, let the reader understand. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. And let him that's on the housetop not go down into the house. Don't go there. Do not go down to pick up anything, but flee. Let him that is in the field not turn back to the barn or the shed to pick up something, but leave, because it's that dangerous. Woe to them that are with children, that is, having to take care of small infants in this traumatic time, and those that are nursing babies, the women that are nursing babies, and pray that it does not happen in winter when bad weather will make your flight to safety all that more difficult and dangerous. Now, Jesus is not talking about the end of the world here. He's talking about the day of the Lord when there is a time of trauma, drama, and destruction on Jerusalem. Now, Jesus had been a prophetic critic of Jerusalem for a long time. There's a very famous passage where Jesus looks out over Jerusalem from the Mount of Olives. I've been on the Mount of Olives. You can stand up there and see all of the old city. And it describes Jesus weeping over the city. And he said, I called you like a mother hen, but you wouldn't come. You would not respond. You would not gather to me as the one who was sent by God on a mission to help Israel repent and live according to the commands of God, to love your neighbor, to do justice, to love mercy, to walk humbly with God. Jesus called the people to that, and they refused. The political authorities, the religious establishment, many other people, they were drawn to him because he was a miracle worker. He was a winsome person. The children loved him. The people loved him. But you know, his message was one of, could be stern. Love your neighbor as yourself. So here we are. Pray that it's not in flight, for in those days there will be afflictions. You'll see the kind of disaster, the kind of danger, the kind of affliction not seen since the beginning of time. But if any man say to you, verse 21, look, in the midst of this drama, here's the Messiah. It's the end of the age. There he is. He's coming. He's going to save us. Jesus says, verse 21, do not believe them. False messiahs, false prophets are going to arise and show signs and wonders to deceive even the elect of God. Take heed, verse 23. Behold, I've told you all of these things. Now, what Jesus was saying, of course, is that in addition to the regular drama and trauma in the world, all the time, for everybody, tsunami this week in the Pacific Ocean. Maybe next week it'll be earthquakes. Maybe the following week a rebellion in a country. Maybe the Russian army is going to intensify its attack and overwhelm Ukraine. Who knows what's going to happen? In addition to all of that normal routine of trouble and danger and death and dying, there's going to come a specific judgment upon Jerusalem in Jesus' day. Now, he was teaching about the year 30 or 33, we think, A.D., Anno Domini. That's the way we account for our years. And that's what happened. In the year 66 A.D. up to 70 A.D., the Jewish people revolted against Rome. Rome sent in the Roman legions under Vespasian. There were battles in the north, that is in Galilee, and the armies came and surrounded Jerusalem. This is what Jesus was referring to. He said, when you see this happening, get out of town. They're going to blockade Jerusalem. This is exactly what happened. People who did not get out died of starvation, died at the sword of a Roman soldier. And then after the Romans leveled Jerusalem, they went down to the Dead Sea, surrounded Masada. That's where the last holdout is. I hope if you go to Israel, you go to Masada. It was a geologic formation that gave it great natural defenses. And that's where Herod built a palace overlooking the Dead Sea and the whole Jordan Valley. And that's where about 240, I think it was 250 refugees from the Roman army held out for days, weeks, and months until the Romans stormed the top of that rock formation and discovered everybody dead except a mother and 2 children. They had taken a pact to kill one another, everybody. That's what happened, except this mother and 2 children hid from the self-slaughter. That's in Masada. Jesus was right that the day was coming. And that's our red letter lesson today. This gives us, it gives us the assurance, first of all, that the trauma we see around us is nothing new. It gives us the assurance that the teachings of Jesus were spoken in a time of intense trauma and danger and uncertainty for Jesus and his people. So when he speaks to us through the scriptures, when Jesus talks to us today, we can say it is from a very similar experience of fright and flight, of destruction. Now I'll be back in just a minute to wrap up this Sunday in the House. Let me conclude this Sunday in the House with this story that happened this week. Some of you remember that about 10 days ago, I wrote an article about ICE, the Immigration and Customs Enforcement. I've been very critical of ICE, as have many, many people in the United States. I refer to them as a Gestapo time, and I wonder, you know, they are surprising people and telling them that their citizenship or their visa has been stripped. And I'm wondering why they're doing this. Why doesn't the government just send these people a letter and saying that we've revoked your visa, you've got 30 days to leave the country? I don't know, but I wrote this article very critical. It's called The Ice Age. In response, I had a reader, a subscriber to the newsletter up in Maine, unsubscribe. Now, I don't know this man, but 2 weeks earlier, he had written me a wonderful and very positive message. He'd sent me a link to an article, and in response, I wrote him back. I said, thank you for this article. Thank you for being a subscriber. Tell me who you are and how you got connected. I'm not going to share his name, but he didn't remember how he first subscribed, but it was very positive in what he said about what I wrote, week by week by week. And then 2 weeks later, he unsubscribes. So I was curious, and I wrote him. I said, would you care to talk more about your unsubscribing? And he said yes. He said, I'm just weary of all the bad news. I find it depressing. It crushes my spirit. It makes me sad. Not just what you say, he said to me, but everybody. And he said, I just had to take a break. And I wrote him back and said, you've done the right thing. You're protecting your own soul, your own spirit. Sometimes I feel like this, and I have done it, turned away from the news, quit watching all the bad stuff. I've encouraged everybody to find a waterfall and go hike or go to the local market, ways to minister to your own spirit. But then, The next day, he writes me and said, I've changed my mind. I want to resubscribe, and I'm going to send you a donation. I was very grateful to him. And it illustrates the changing moods that we have, the need to stay informed and stay engaged, and also to support voices like ours that are trying to be positive and trying to discern a way to walk in these wobbly times. So I honor him and I honor you. You're watching today, whenever it is, maybe Sunday, maybe Wednesday, maybe Thursday, maybe you're a donor. I hope you are. We got a check for $500 from somebody in Texas yesterday. Maybe you feel inspired to support us, to share the broadcast, to send a donation, to send me a word. I want to hear from you. I'm very interested in what you think and what you say, the questions that are bubbling up in your own soul. We are all trying to find our way forward, and I'm trying to help us look to Jesus as a teacher, as a guide, as someone who can show us the way forward as we seek to do justice, to love mercy, and walk humbly with God. God bless you today. I hope you have a wonderful day today. Let me hear from you, and I'll see you again next week, Sunday, in the house.